guys, we're looking back at the very best Thunder games of the season, and might as well look back at the one that this team played last. It's the last time Thunder fans got to see their squad, a 105-104 victory up in Boston. This was harrowing throughout the afternoon because that Sunday, it was back and forth all game. It was the second meeting between these teams. The Thunder had lost by 1 point at Chesapeake Energy Arena, and this one was just as good. Big picture, Mike, what did you think that this win said about the Thunder?
Well, first of all, you're trying to close out an East Coast road trip. Had a possibility to go 3-0. Well, we know the Thunder did go 3-0. And, you had every reason to possibly say, all right, this is just one of those games. We beat the Knicks on that same trip. We started the trip with a win in Detroit. You can easily walk into this game because Boston had beaten you, a couple of 3 or 4 weeks earlier at your place. And you go in there and you change the whole scene. You're playing without one of your top scorers in Shea. His first game, he missed all season. And you flip the script and you come out with a W.
When we look at the big picture in this, the Thunder had lost 3 consecutive season series to Boston, 2 games to none. And I think in the bowels of this team, or in the heart of this team, when they play teams that are viewed as better than them, I think they have the capacity to rise up. And there have been instances during the course of the season where that's not been the case. And they've been viewed, I think, in the national narrative of what a nice little story going on in Oklahoma City, but this is not truly a challenging team. Well, without Shea, their top scorer, they go into Boston, a true contender in the Eastern Conference, and they gut out a 1-point win. That spoke volumes. They had lost 7 straight to the Celtics. And this was a game where they had so many pockets of adversity they had to overcome, including an 18-point deficit late in the second quarter. Teams without intestinal fortitude go away in those circumstances. As Mike said, playing the third game of a 3-game road trip, readying to board a plane to head home after.
Yeah, and this team, in my opinion, was coming off of maybe its easiest win of the year against New York and playing at an all-time high confidence-wise. And I think that there was a little bit of revenge that they wanted to take on Boston after that close loss. They felt like they had some opportunities with all those missed layups the first time that they played. And coming into Boston, which is a tough place to play, as Michael said, on the last game of a road trip, I think we were all in a little bit of a daze early on because you lost an hour going east, and then you had daylight savings, losing an hour on that Saturday night going into the Sunday. It was a 6 p.m. tip, and it felt like it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But this team was riding high confidence-wise. Jason Tatum was getting all the accolades as to being kind of that breakout star of the spring. And so I think it set the table for a really fun game.
I just thought it was another example of kind of just the connection, the love, affection that this team has for one another. CP3 couldn't resist the opportunity to tease his buddy Shea after the game. He said, headline, SGA out, Thunder roll. And Chris was in the middle of so many pivotal moments. Guys, what was your take on maybe some situations within this game that really were defining for the entire afternoon?
Well, when I went back and looked at this game, it was clear that even though the difference in the scoreboard might have been late in the fourth quarter with the Thunder finally getting on top, but really it came late in the second quarter when the Thunder were down by 18 points with about a minute to go. Boston had rattled off 5 consecutive threes, and the Thunder were facing its biggest deficit of the game, and then all of a sudden decided to hit the accelerator there with about a minute to go on a 7-0 run, created some turnovers, had some shots drop in, and that got it down to 11 going into halftime, just to give them the idea of, hey, look, we don't have a huge hill to climb. We're still within striking distance, making it an 11-point game going into the halftime momentum that they carried into the third quarter.
And Chris Paul, who always puts his trademark on games at pivotal moments, absolutely grabbed that one by the neck at the end of the second quarter. He willed the team to a 7-0 run, so they were within striking distance going to the locker room. Rather than being down 18, it's 11. They've got momentum. Keep in mind, Boston systematically this season has been the best third-quarter team in basketball, and the Thunder used the bridge from that run to end the second into the third to outscore Boston 31-21 in that third quarter on the road. So they're down 1 point going to the fourth quarter with momentum. I thought that stretch of time, along with the endgame sequence where Paul was just masterful defensively, forcing Kemba Walker into the double team away from midcourt where there was space for him to dribble, which allowed Schroeder the steal and the driving layup to win the game, but also the defense he played getting underneath Jason Tatum on that last shot where Tatum got to his spot, but Paul is so masterful in understanding angles and what he needs to do to stymie guys defensively. He forced that shot short by Tatum. So I look at those sequences in the game, and Chris Paul was front and center in all of them.
Well, for me, I just think, how do you compare this game to the Minnesota game with Steven Adams throwing the ball to Schroeder and he catches it, ties it up, game goes into overtime? This situation, you get a steal. Chris Paul turns a guy, Schroeder steals the ball, lays it up, and it puts you in a position to win the basketball game. I try to put my finger on different plays. I think Fish and Matt, you guys bring up good points there. So I'm kind of going a little bit different direction. I think it just shows that when you come back from 24 down against the Chicago Bulls, it's different. But when you come back from 18 down against the Clippers and you come back from 18 down against the Celtics on the road, that shows you, Matt, what you were talking about, the fortitude, the character, the backbone of a team really showed. And that's why they had their 40th win of the season, because of situations like that.
And Mike, there were so many opportunities for them to let go of the rope. And sometimes I look about what's not happening on the court. There was a sequence where the Thunder missed 3 straight free throws by Dennis Schroeder. Abdul Nader missed a fast break layup. That would have been a perfect opportunity at the end of a long road trip to just let it go. You're going to lose a tough one on the road to a great team. This team dug in and they got it done in the fourth quarter. And as Matt mentioned, CP3 stood up and delivered in the fourth. And guys, that leads us to, who was your player of the game? Give us some accolades here coming down the stretch.
Well, I would say the way that the Thunder, obviously you game plan every game in the NBA, and a lot of times it's on the fly. It's in hotel meeting rooms the day of games because there's just not a lot of practice time in the throes of a season. But Fish, you mentioned this earlier. Jason Tatum had been on a run of 30-plus point scoring games, and that was vaulting the Celtics through some injury issues. No Jaylen Brown in this game. They got Gordon Hayward back. Daniel Tyson missed some time, but Tatum was the guy that was stabilizing them. He was 8 of 22. He didn't score 20 points. He was minus 16 in the raw plus minus in this game. Don't minimize Billy Donovan's defensive game plan against him and the way the Thunder were able to execute that, because the Celtics rolled, gaining that 18-point advantage, knocking out a lot of threes. They got out in transition, did a good job running in this game with 22 fast break points. But I think the Thunder's ability to minimize Tatum's impact individually really allowed them the ability to dig in late to stymie Boston's offense in the second half to come back and win this game.
Well, I think, for me, guys, trying to find a player of the game, it made me pull my hair out. Well, I don't have hair, but it made me think a lot, and I came up with a great answer, okay? To me, the player of the game or moments of the game happened collectively from the bench. I thought the bench's 41-17 advantage was huge that night. Your leading scorer misses his first game of the season in Shea, and your bench comes up so big, as we've mentioned so many times throughout the season. That 41 points and 17 advantage against the Celtics that night, a team that was third place in the Eastern Conference, was huge.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up on that because Dennis Schroeder comes off the bench, and Dennis, as Nick, you mentioned, he missed 3 free throws. He was an 84% free throw shooter. He missed 3 free throws in the second half after getting fouled on a 3-point shot, and that could really rattle a player, but it didn't rattle Dennis at all. He was able to run through the finish line and had some huge moments, had some big shots, including the 3 right at the end of the third quarter to bring the Thunder to within 1. And then obviously he had the big steal on Kemba Walker. Don't forget about the defense that he had on Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker was not a factor in this game like he was the first time these two teams met. And Dennis Schroeder coming up with that big steal and the game-winning shot, putting the Thunder ahead with under a minute to go. He was fantastic because he and Chris Paul really drove the offense in the absence of SGA. They had to make up 20 points, and those two guards really did a great job.
Yeah, you mentioned CP3, and I got to go with him. Not only did he score, but that final possession, Jason Tatum's trying to set up about 10 feet away from the rim. He doesn't end up catching the ball until about 18 feet away, and that's where he's taking that shot, a turnaround fadeaway. And Chris Paul's pointing down to the floor as that shot goes awry, saying, "That's my spot," and he took care of business. Guys, it was an incredible game to rewatch. It was unfortunately the last time that we've gotten to see this team. I know Thunder fans are itching for the next time they see Thunder basketball on the floor. Thanks for joining me today.